Well,
If the last 8 years hadn't happened, or the last 8 months hadn't happened, we'd be in exactly the same question, which is where we are.
Yeah, so my understanding of the history of this project, it was never Kennet Township's intention to support this project on its own. We're relying on the Commonwealth to get involved, especially because there are state roads there. So our plan as of today has been up to now and including now is to engage the project and to support some of it, but with support from the Commonwealth, financial support from the Commonwealth. It's not a project that's on our short-term list of able to complete without their assistance. It's just outside of our means, and I don't think the circumstances change that.
yeah, I mean, there are three ways in which this project, there's two ways in which the project can really be done if we don't do it ourselves. And that is to get a grant from the state, or eventually PennDOT, if the intersection continues to fail, if people start getting killed or there are more accidents, okay, then eventually it'll move up the PennDOT list, and they will put it on their own, what they call the tip list, and then they'll have to pay for it all. So actually, it would be in their interest to have us pay for a portion of it, and it would be in our interest to pay for it if that accelerated the project, rather than waiting for a bunch of people to die. I think that's sort of a simple way to put it. But right now, we are going through that process and doing what we can. We're putting in applications that pass all of the technical tests and, in fact, follow exactly the recommendations of PennDOT, and we haven't gotten a grant. So that's just the way it is sometimes in the grant world. Any other questions on that? Yes.
Real quick one. I sit at that intersection. I know you guys said there was a study, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be a big enough space for a circle for tractor trailers and like the box car
Have you
type
reviewed
of
the
truck.
studies? Have you been a part of the discussions? We've spent several meetings on here with the video that showed it in its actual scale size.
I've seen something. I don't remember the video.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
we can bring that back in a future meeting.
Yeah, we can do that.
I mean,
But-
I can
but
see it's
clearly,
reconfigured a little
the
bit.
tractor
Take
trailers-
land off.
Well, I'm not sure this picture,
Excuse
which
me.
is illustrative, is
Michael,
the
I'm
final.
speaking.
I'm sorry.
In fact, the tractor trailers do fit the scale.
Okay.
It does work.
Okay.
Now it's your turn, Mike.
I'm sorry, I was just saying that the picture you're looking at may not be the exact
To
picture. I
scale it,
just-
to
yeah,
understand.
right.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Just when you're sitting there between Lester Wooder and the two houses that are there, or three, it just seems very tight.
It is, and there's a
Yeah.
removal, I think, of one or two of the structures as part of the
Okay.
process.
I got you. Okay.
Yes.
So there's a comment up here from
Sorry.
our fire police person.
Weren't they talking, the last thing they were talking about, instead of a circle, making an oval? To go
Yes,
from the field,
and
so
offsetting it. It's not going
Going
to
up to where the,
be evenly
box
set
is
on
there.
top of that.
so it's not
Crisscross.
to handle the tractor trailers,
I got you.
rather than just
Okay.
a circle.
There's a lot of traffic on 82. I mean, there's a lot on Hillendale too, but the traffic, the truck traffic seems to be on 82. But anyway, coming out of the one.
Yes, Michael.
Spindle.
Anyone else on this subject?
You want to finish, please?
Yes, I was going to go to the next topic.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next topic is also in the indoor ag area in our initiative, and that has to do with grower recruitment. So when we first began the indoor agriculture initiative, one of the long-term goals was to start to recruit growers of other crops than mushrooms to come into the area and take advantage of the infrastructure that we have. So it's an economic development opportunity. And earlier this year, we had a very successful site visit with a representative of the Japan Plant Factory Association and one of its members, who is the head of a major indoor grower in Japan with facilities and also in Thailand and China. And they told us after that site visit, and we'd had other meetings with them at conferences, so forth, that we were the best value proposition for large-scale indoor agriculture production in the U.S., which was great to hear because that was our premise And that's, of course, because we have an existing infrastructure for the mushroom industry. And this month, he finally got back to us. Basically, he was tied up in another major project, which actually now puts him in a better position to come in here, and he wants to begin talking to us again, so we expect to re-engage in early 2020. So that's just another ongoing item. Another project, this is actually part of our, it's part of our community-based land stewardship initiative, is to put a riparian buffer in an area of Spar Hill. We already have another riparian buffer project in Spar Hill. By the way, Spar Hill is a new park/preserve that we acquired recently, about 103 acres. It's an old farm that you may know on Burnt Mill Road. And there's already some riparian buffer work going on Burroughs Run, but there's a tributary to Burroughs Run, and that's another area. And the opportunity came up to apply for a special bonus grant round from Pico Growing Greener for $10,000, which requires no match. So it was an fairly easy decision to apply for that, and not that difficult to do the application. And what we're going to do if we get the grant is plant a couple of acres in trees, about 453 trees. And in this case, they will be fruit and nut bearing, so they will be what is called a food forest. You may have read in the paper several other municipalities now experimenting with this idea of creating food forests, and in this case, it's all with native trees, and it's all around the stream, so it will also act as a riparian buffer. The project would be, all the expenses would be paid for by this grant, and it would be done with volunteers of our CBLS program along with our partners primarily at the Land Conservancy.
If you guys are looking for other people who are really good at planting trees, there's a very good, a lot of very talented people up at Kendall Crosslands who've been doing a lot of planting of trees along the riparian buffer, so they might be interested in helping as well.
Yes, thank you. Recently, in November, early November, I attended a very interesting conference at the at TMAC, the Transportation Management Association of Chester County, basically on how the electrification of transportation is going in Chester County, what the plans are, and actually across all of southeast Pennsylvania. And it was really a quite interesting conference with a lot of potential implications here in Kennett because of all of the trucking that we do here around the mushroom industry and also between the port and here. We are an obvious target for significant electrification. So it was very good to learn that the Eastern PA Alliance for Clean Transportation, EPAC, has been, and the PA Department of the Environment Department, and also the Transportation, and PICO, which obviously will be involved in anything like that, are already doing a lot of extensive planning in this area. And also there were two of our local state, regional state representatives at the meeting who spoke. So this is something I think that is good for people to know, that this is really, there's really serious planning going on in this area.
Cover it, Mike? Are you, that does it? Are you ready for
Well,
questions?
no, because I'm also,
So Michael has volunteered to give the Community-Based Land Stewardship Initiative report, which is our last report.
right, so this is Catherine Catherine Pearlstein prepared this, but she and I work on this together, so that's why I'm doing it. So we're also doing a Barkingfield Park meadow restoration and demonstration. 7.25 acres of the meadow in Barkingfield were seeded and with warm season grasses, and another acre with a mixture of grasses and wildflowers. And this was done by volunteers of the the Community-Based Land Stewardship Ecological Garden group. And you can you can read the background if you have more interest in that. Also, I think as was mentioned earlier, an item was the Barkingfield Park interpretive and entrance signs, which you authorized today. So I'll skip that because that was discussed. The CBLS seminar and program series, which you also discussed earlier for at least one of the items. So this is a plan. This is the plan. Some people asked what else was in this series for 2020. This is the spring series, so you can go through that. And then the Spar Hill Stewardship, I've already discussed as part of the grant that I discussed earlier. And then just as a general background, in November, we recorded 42 volunteer hours as part of the ecological group and stream steward monitoring. So, and then one of the last item is that we've engaged with the Department of Natural Resources on prioritizing where we want to do streamside planting, essentially riparian buffers, and we're going to work with them so that we can optimize the areas that we select for that. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, very interesting. That was the reason why I was so concerned during the budgetary process, that we bear in mind the work that you and your group have been doing for the indoor ag, how important that was.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I insert a comment?
You see what I mean?
Rich
Yeah, I
definitely
had
for
a
me.
couple questions for Michael.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you can do it from sitting, it's been
Okay.
a long day. So, I mean, we all know that, we use the failing rate for 5 points, but it actually got a D the last time it was
D.
rated. Do we know how old that is? I mean, could we sort of try to get another grade and fail, which is the opposite of what you do in school? But,
I don't know what
how
we can
old
do.
is it?
Someone
Roger?
actually suggested
Roger's gone.
somewhat facetiously that we stage an accident.
Well-
Not
I'm
to
not
have an
being
accident.
facetious at all,
Oh,
actually.
yeah,
My
that's right,
comment,
you was, that's
yeah,
what
I was not
so
being
I should
facetious,
say-
so,
Okay.
and I'll be completely upfront with you about what I suggested. I suggested that we reach out to our fire companies and see if they are interested, because they do training, with cars that have already been wrecked, and they go into them and, create scenes and then practice on them. And I said, let's do it at this horrible intersection that we have in Kennett Township, so they can practice and train, and we can go through that whole process, and we'll take photographs. And next time I go to Harrisburg and ask for money for this project, I'm going to say, this is what I don't want to happen in Kennett Township. So maybe you can help us out. The example that I used when we were there in October, November, I said the cost of this project is greater than our cost of our 24/7 police department. It's just not sustainable. So, please help us out with your roads. I mean, I'm a little testy about the process. They're PennDOT roads. We're doing them a favor. It is in their interest for us to work together. And it's difficult to go to Harrisburg and have everyone tell you, oh, this is a great application. This is exactly what we look for. From the appropriations committees, from the governor's office, all that. And then, well, so sorry, didn't work out year after year after year. But that was my recommendation.
And short of that photographic evidence, or example,
Yes, perhaps we should have
how long ago was the grade done? And
I don't know.
could we test it and maybe we get a worse grade, which would help us?
We can look into that.
That was my only
That
question.
might be a call just to give you a
Yeah.
conversation.
And then,
Are you done?
no, I had another question.
Go
So,
ahead.
sorry. So on the Center of Excellence,
Yeah.
the procurement, of electricity.
Yes.
Are you looking at that from any source, or since it's a green indoor ag, are you looking at green energy sources?
Okay.
How are you looking at
So, well, actually, both.
that? Okay,
So,
you answered the
depends
question.
on, well, you want a
Yeah,
more,
go ahead.
somewhat more detailed
Sure.
explanation? I'll try not to get too into the weeds. So, we can specify for any group the characteristics that we want. So, if we can make the group large, and also if we can make the group large enough, we can make some characteristics like green energy more attractive. So, for example, we did a contract for, as you well know, we did a contract for the township itself, in which we were able to reduce both the cost and switch to green energy. If we were to offer that to the public of Kennet Township, or to businesses in Kennet Township, and we had a large enough group, we could probably get similar savings. In the case of the Center of Excellence, we're looking at the green, either the green indoor agriculture market, which at this point is very small, okay, and not concentrated here, or the mushroom industry, right? So we would go to the mushroom industry and we would ask the mushroom industry what they want. Okay, do they want to be able to claim that they have green energy, which they can use as potentially as publicity for themselves, as reducing their carbon footprint as a food source or something like that? They might be interested in that. Or they might be interested primarily in cost savings. And then if we could, we'd like to get the cost savings down for renewables to a level where that would be attractive. But if not, we'd settle for just lower costs, because from an economic development standpoint, that's good for the industry and that's good for the area.
Thank you.
You finished?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just one point, to talk about 5 points, that we shouldn't look at just the accidents there, but the impact of that intersection having on emergency services getting down to the whole southwest end of the township. That's the only road from the borough to get down there. And, you know, what is the impact when the traffic really backs up there in the morning and in the afternoon?
We walked our legislators through all of that.
Okay,
Oh,
And
yes.
we made, you're dead on.
okay,
Yeah.
great.
No pun intended.
Bad pun. Thanks.
Thank you.
So if I could insert a comment, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I just want to point out and say thank you to our team for all of these reports. This is different than what we've seen, but this is going to be, so long as the board is approving, the new normal for reporting. There is a lot that goes on in your township, and I want you to know what's going on in your township and have an opportunity to engage it, make suggestions, influence it, tell us you think that's a really bad idea, whatever it may be. And then kind of have that ongoing dialogue monthly. We're not going to do it at every meeting. We'll do it once a month, which will be the second meeting of the month, and then go from there. So hopefully you enjoy that. These reports will all be on the public website. So if you didn't get to read through every word, but you want to, and maybe you lose your packet, it's on the website. You can send it to your friends and neighbors, tell them it's there, and we'll work towards a model where we'll get that on, as Amy was saying, with the bill voucher at the Friday before the meeting. So that's the direction we're headed. Any suggestions, changes, proposed improvements, let us know those too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes our formal agenda and brings us down to public comment. We've been sort of working on public comment all the way through, which is the way things seem to work here. But we're still at that point, public comment. So are there comments that people want to share with us? Yes, ma'am.
I would like first to say thank you to those of you who have worked so hard on the grants. I know what it takes. And you've obviously done a great job writing the proposals and giving the speeches in Harrisburg. So thank you. I think it's great.
Thank you.
I have one question. And I'm glad the attorney's here. Maybe he can answer if you folks can't. In most municipalities in Maryland, I'm still not as familiar as I'd like to be, and I'm hoping I will be more familiar with Pennsylvania. In your code of the township or in the Pennsylvania law, is there a requirement that elected officials live in the township for which there is? In both or in one or the other? In both?
In the second-class township code, to qualify to get on the ballot, to be elected, attempt to be elected as a supervisor, you must be a resident of the township
Right.
for at least one full year prior to your nomination.
Okay. And do you have to remain in the township?
Yes.
Okay.
If any one of our supervisors were to move out of the township, it would immediately cause a vacancy in that elected position.
Okay. Well, in that, it's pretty much the same as Maryland, but each state is different. I was curious about it. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there other questions or comments that anybody would like to share with us tonight?
I got a few. Last night we heard about insurance for Lisa Moore for embezzlement or somehow to get recouped. Tonight we kind of heard about insurance for a lawsuit and settlement within that. So how much insurance does the township actually carry, and is one a different kind of
Yeah,
liability
different
versus
kinds.
the other?
There's different.
You know, so
We have a lot of insurance policies for a number of different things for very high amounts. I always get frustrated, though it is important and oftentimes required, at the amount we pay in insurance. But we have to. I mean, we have a large fleet of vehicles. We have public officials insurance. We, Amy and I, and actually Whitney and Megan also, all have fidelity bonds that we have, which was, I think, one large piece of insurance that you
Right.
heard about. We're bonded. We're getting the process. So, yes, we have a lot of
But
insurance,
during the
property
bud-
insurance, liability.
budget conversations, we said we increased that insurance. Was that
Yeah, so we
due to
increased
what
we increased the cost for the cost for the fidelity bonding for some of our employees went up because we increased our bonding limits.
okay? And
So
then-
you heard that the former manager was bonded at $1 million. I'm bonded at $1 million. Amy will be bonded at about $4.5 million.
Okay,
So,
I got you.
Yeah.
All right, and then I know I painstakingly sat through all the budget meetings, but remind
Hey, with
me-
pleasure, right? A smile on your face. Yeah,
That's pretty
absolutely.
good. I don't know why I'm smiling at, 11, whatever, but anyway, you guys mentioned last night there was $350K so far spent on legal, auditors, whatever.
As of the beginning of December, correct.
Right. So
No,
where was that on the budget, or, you know what I mean, or how does that?
That includes the payments in here,
Does it include?
which is
Okay,
substantial.
perfect. That's
It
good.
includes a payment in the packet, but where is it on a line item in the budget for?
For next year?
Yeah.
If you remember, there was a line that said that any costs for recovery are gonna be paid out of existing reserves. So we didn't take it out of our revenue for last
I
year.
got
There's a line.
Alright,
So it's zero, so that 4 million that I talked about, it'll come out of there and we'll account for that and then we'll attach that to the recovery process. So the goal is, and I made my expectation very clear to Joe Palooka, as the board, we're spending a lot of money for this recovery process. Attach as much, if not all of it, to the recovery process to try the recovery. So, and someone last night, I forget who it was, came up at the end of the night, and they asked the very obvious question, which was, at some point, there may be a diminishing rate of returns. And that's a perfectly reasonable
Right.
question, and we're all over that. So we're looking
Okay.
at, we're not gonna spend boatloads of money to collect pennies, that doesn't make any sense. So we are monitoring that in sort of way.
No, we've had that discussion very, very clearly from the very beginning, and that was one of the first things we had, even when we were interviewing counsel for that purpose. Looking at what was there, there's, a list of things we're interested in pursuing and making sure that we're going after all of that systematically. And, sometimes just having worked in litigation early on before I decided to do digital marketing. Sometimes you can send somebody a nasty letter and they give you insurance limits, and sometimes it takes more than that. So we'll have to see what happens.
I got it. And then my last question is not meant to be funny and it's gonna sound funny, but who's responsible for opening the mail now? I mean, and who gets to see what's in the mail? I mean, that was a big thing last night,
Go ahead.
Is there
Yeah,
a policy and
everybody-
procedure for that?
Everybody opens the mail. So we do have a primary receptionist, and then there's a backup and a backup. So Michael and Megan are backups to those two others, and
Okay,
they all anyone and everyone, so that
Can see it.
everything
Okay.
is
alright,
is seen.
Our
Everybody
staff
sees the bank
is-
statements. everybody sees the credit card statements.
Our team is very helpful to us. Amy and I have color-coded files of our mail that's already opened and stamped received and organized,
Right.
you know, from important to junk. And then we look at that every day, so they do a great job for us.
Cool.
Good question.
Alright,
Did you have a question?
It was about fidelity bonding, and that's been answered, so we're good.
Covered. Yes, Jeff, you gave that one up. Yes, sir.
Would it be possible, instead of like looking back at each one of these packets for the expenditures associated with the financial investigation, to have a running total of all of the costs associated with that? Instead of flipping through each one, kind of group it all together? And I would even say, you know, maybe have for that account, which is, or the account number, specifically for financial investigation, but also other costs associated with the temporary interim manager, the finder fees for Eden, which was a great find, lawyer fees, software, overtime. A lot of those would be wipe away costs because they should have been purchased anyway, the cost of the software and so forth. But, you know, what did this cost us? And, you know, could we kind of keep a running total of?
So the immediate question is, that we will have it all tracked in proper GL accounts, and when I get the reports I was talking about, even year-to-date P&L, when I have that, I will have any level of detail below it to drill into. So we could show an account with its detail. In terms of, you're saying, well, pull this and pull that, I mean, I definitely have financial investigation together. I know where Eden's recruiter is booked, but it's not in a way. So, I mean, if I can create something.
I just think it would be worthwhile so that we have an idea of what this costs us.
Yeah, I think what you're asking for is what, to date and then ongoing, what's our total cost for
Right, each month
the investigation
updated.
and recovery? And then the other side of that is what's the recovery? And we'll be able to report on that as it's happening as well. I believe there might be a couple qualifiers on that, but in general, we should be able to report on that. So I think we can put something together. We can add that into our reporting process.
I just
That
might not
may
have
take a little while.
attributed everything you're saying as part of it into those categories. So
Yeah,
they might not be,
Understood.
you may attribute something that,
Like you
No, I
heard,
won't
or you heard Amy say earlier to Mr. Gall's question, these internal policies, procedures, and segregation of duties and all that. Are we just doing that because of the fraud, or are we doing it because it's the right way to operate? And the answer is obviously the latter. We're doing it because it's the right way to operate. So some of the costs that you outlined would have happened regardless of any of this if any professional manager or finance director landed here. The recruitment cost is a good example. The upgrading your accounting software. We're doing that because it's the right thing to do, not. It just so happens that there was alleged fraud.
Yeah, and there's a
We can
couple,
put something together.
yeah, there's a couple little things that are sort of like weird issues out there, like there were some errors, like we had to, we talked a little bit about correcting the way one of the pension plans worked and everything else, and we had to hire an attorney to do that because that was what I would call it errors and omissions on the last part that we discovered when we were untangling all of that stuff. So we are making a claim on our errors and omissions policy on the insurance to try and recoup the cost that we had to do to straighten some of that stuff out. So there's some stuff where it's not necessarily part of the ongoing theft, but it is part of the general recovery process. So we'll figure out that and try and get that stuff included.
Yes.
Excellent.
And part of all that too is, if I understood, there was unpaid payroll taxes. So there's gotta be penalties, interest, whatever.
And yeah, Rick's working on that. And so,
I mean, we've gotta include that in this 3.2 million and all these costs that,
there's a couple of GLs that we have for the ongoing. One you see in here with the financial investigation. There's a couple of nearby GLs that stuff is in.
and our insurance, you know, I'd like some analysis from the insurance company if our rates go up and what is attributed to that. I mean, I
So
would
it's
like,
going to depend. So remember, a fidelity bond and the cost for that is dependent on the worthiness of the applicant, right? So if I had like really bad credit and really bad criminal history or whatever, and if they were still bonding me, that cost would be really high. Thankfully, it wasn't, because those things aren't the case. So it is dependent on the applicant. So the cost for bonding the individual is specific to the individual. So those costs aren't gonna go up. But, we can certainly run that analysis. We're interested in that stuff too.
And
Those are all good
I
suggestions.
bring up again, as I did earlier, that for me personally, to have confidence in this board again, I expect to see a dramatic adjustment in our budget. That any fluff, unnecessary expenditures are removed for now. I'm not saying I want them gone forever, but that's how I would operate. And that's prudently, I think, a proper thing to do until we get a handle on what we have, where we're at, what we're gonna get back from this, and get ourselves whole again, and then start building from that. And aside from doing that, I just,
So I want to give some credibility to the budget process that we went through, and you were really an integral part of it. You were here, I think, for
well,
every
and
meeting.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm sitting here feeling that it was a big waste of time.
So I completely disagree, because we went bottom up and looked at literally every expenditure that the township's expecting to experience next year. So, we looked at all of that, and if you remember, we
And all
started,
the income,
and all
based
the,
on the actual income.
right, and we started, I think, $500,000 over our expected revenue, and we cut $650,000 by the time we were done.
That's before I knew 3.2 million. Over 3.2 million has been stolen. That's not 300,000, that's 3.2 million.
Your point's well received, but the
I'm
20.
not sure it is.
Well, certainly, I mean, it is for me. Your point's well received for me. We took our budget process seriously because that's what we do, but we certainly knew that there was this hanging thing out there, which was that was going to drop. So, our analysis isn't more or less serious because of that. We're professionals in the way that we deal with this, and we're going to make professional recommendations to the board and the public, regardless of the circumstances. The right decision is the right decision. We don't want to have wasteful spending, no matter what. That's not where we come from, and that's not how we operate. So,
Well,
and
and
we're
there's
operating
not
within
people
the
here
means.
that would feel these things are wasteful spending, and I'm not saying they are wasteful. I'm saying the unnecessary expenditures should not be happening now.
So you were with us for every expenditure that we reviewed, which is every cost that we expect for 2020 next year. So, and the library is a contentious one, we know that, and that's a separate operating fund that the board's dealing with. It's, frankly, I classify it as more of a political question. So, thinking of the general fund, which includes EMS, what expenditures have you cut that we didn't already?
And I was afraid you're gonna ask me that, but I'm trying
You looked at all of them.
I'm trying to juggle 2 jobs, staying up late at night, and I'm asking you to look at that. Because I have to honestly say, I don't know all the intricacies of all these things.
Right.
But vertical growing is not essential.
Sure.
Is
If you remember,
is
that
your
was
job
on the-
essential? Yes. Is Amy's job essential right now? Yes.
Well, it's interesting that
Road crew? Yes.
I think it's really interesting that you bring up
Anything else? I'm not sure. I'm not, anything else, I'm not sure.
So, it's really interesting that you bring up indoor ag. That was on the chopping block at some point. We cut that in the process, and we got feedback from the board of the community to put it back in. And we cut it in half.
But that's before I knew $3.2 million
Right, I
was
understand.
missing.
So,
So
well,
just one
that's
more
interesting. Well, you
review,
gave me an
yeah.
example. You gave me what I asked for, so I appreciate that. You gave me what I asked for, so thank you.
I hope.
You did. I asked for
Your
an example
job's
of what you were cutting.
essential,
You said
Amy's
indoor ag.
essential, Roger.
So, I mean,
I
I
would
think
argue
we,
Sergeant Gordon's essential, but
He had his hand
I'm
up.
questioning that.
Yes, sir.
Real fast from Hartville Estates. Let me phrase it another way. Are there any proposals underway for tax increase initiatives?
yes.
Maybe that's the question.
Yeah, and I think most of the, so the board has signaled their support for an increase in the general tax levy of 0.15 mils to support the library. So that's what you're talking about
Well,
earlier.
that one I know
Is
about.
that the only one?
That's the
Yes.
only one. Sewer rates are probably going to go up, but
We
yes,
don't have it.
you don't have public sewer.
That's not tax.
It's not.
That's a-
It's a rate increase, so if you get a sewer bill, you'd probably be, like Eden, why didn't you mention that? So that's why I threw it out there.
But why is that an increase?
The sewer rate?
Yeah.
It's been at an operating deficit for years, so we talked about how the cost to operate the sewer fund The sewer system is much greater than the revenue that we're receiving. They've been spending it out of tapping fees.
And is that because the township had to get into the sewer business with the failed homeowner association sewage systems?
Respectfully, I think it's just poor management.
On whose part?
I don't know. I don't know how long the sewer system's been in place, but it was pretty clear very
Well,
early
it's sewer
that
and
they
not
were spending out of
necessarily
tapping fees.
the community-based stuff. You know, so the sewer fees that they are raising is for the flow-through rate that has to do with the borough.
Yeah, I think we're looking mainly at the meter districts, which is not the, not the, I want to say on-lot, but that's not it. Yes, thank you.
Community sector.
So if you recall, we're drilling down into that with more detail, so we'll have a more thorough report on that here, here coming soon, but.
We did that already.
I think you're
We're
next.
looking at more on the revenue side. than
Yeah,
the line.
I just wanted to really thank Amy and Aiden, because I think you came in a hard situation. You took a good look at everything. You tried to give us, hey, I could cut all of this out. You gave us multiple columns on your budget, to be honest with you. I could leave all of this in, I could admit it in the middle. And the people that were here, you know, it was multiple nights, kind of got a voice. I did feel like last night's meeting, if half the people that were interested in last night would actually come here on a regular basis and take part, you could see it. I don't always have the time. I travel a lot. I've got other things going on. I'm gonna be here sporadically. I'm gonna be here when I can. But I think if half those people came out and had the voice, or maybe they're emailing you guys, I don't know. But you know what I mean, then you wouldn't feel so aggravated if something else came up. I am concerned about the tax increase for this year. I don't know if there's, like, out of the 150 you came up with, can we give them 80? Can we give the library 80 and not, you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's just too close or whatever. And I'm not saying don't do the library, but I just think you have to be cognizant of just how this has hurt everybody and hit everybody. So a rate increase, I mean, you know,
So-
people are coming with clubs and lights and, you know, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like, you know, there could be.
So we talked about the library a lot. They actually asked for a 0.3 increase over 3 years. And so we've already cut it in
Tried to
half and
kind
spread
of
it out
spread
over
it out,
twice as long
right.
to
Totally
mitigate the
understand it.
increase and to make it as low as possible and to spread it out over time. So we already did cut it in half.
No, you're still giving the same amount of money, you're just
Total, we're
spreading
spreading it
right.
out.
But I
yes.
think if you maybe skipped this year and just delayed it,
But there-
is that possible? I mean, you know, so.
Not really. I can speak as a library trustee. The idea is, these are commitments that the libraries make, that the townships are making. It's actually a rather small part of the cost of the library.
I understand that.
And if I may finish, and the library then goes and borrows the money necessary to do the construction against that cash flow. So if the township delays that, it's just going to delay or limit what the library can do in terms of moving.
And Michael, on that same point, they do the factoring this year now based on what they have. So if it's put off for another year, now they have to do another financing, or they don't take consideration of it
Right.
because it didn't come along. So it really creates quite a lot of financial havoc for the library to be able to plan for its financial needs on a reasonable borrowing basis.
Yes.
But I think the residents are trying to get you to, you know,
But our
Consider-
needs first.
consider us first. I understand.
No, we
but
are,
that's,
they are
that
considering.
is what she's considering a nice to have as opposed to I have to have.
Correct.
Need and want.
Correct.
Yes.
And we balance them every day in our lives.
Yes, we do.
So anyway,
Well,
I think you guys did a great job, which was my original opening statement there, sorry.
Thank
So,
you.
I know it's been hard.
you know, and this is not just playing for the library, but I think when we think about what do Kent Township residents need and want, we have to think about what is the library's impact on our community, across our community. All the brand new citizens, the ESL programs that are there, all the kids in schools, all the after school programs, all the senior center programs that go there, and all of those other things that do go on for that to be an ongoing community center and doing everything. So when you say whether or not that benefits Kennett Township residents and what do they need and want, that is what we have to consider too. So, it's is it a luxury item or not? Part of it is what it does for the community, I think is really important. And that's, it's, how do you balance that off against, do we do the sewer pipe this year or do whatever else? Those are the things that we have to wrestle with. But I think you do have to look at.
Flush the toilet. Yeah, it's not open.
No, but I'm just saying, I think when you look at that stuff, that's part of the impact that the library has on the community. And because they have numbers that show how many people in the township use it, it is, it's supported by the usage rates.
I just think that overall, like, last night when somebody mentioned the library, there was this boo circling through, and that was a large amount of people.
Yeah.
Plus, if you look at the online comments,
Mhm.
people are not, I mean, I hear the people go there and whatever, but I'm not hearing the voice from those people. Hearing the people here, hearing the people at last night's meeting, hearing the people online. And I just think there's more people right now that are just skeptical of spending the money
No, I
right
understand
now
that.
under this
The gentleman back here had his hand up next.
Yeah, on the library, and again, on that tax and your points you just make, it would be a little bit different but Kennett Township has been very generous to the library for a very long time. Extremely, and the numbers, I think, can be questioned a little bit. Also, there were not real firm numbers from the library at that presentation. There were some numbers that were given that were library card numbers, and with no disrespect. But then the numbers that we keep repeating were ones that were talked about as well. There's sharing of the library card numbers and so forth. And the number that everybody's using to do the math with are not really consistent across how the usage is between all the townships. But with all that said, in a time that we really, in the past, I think Kennett Township has been able to be generous, and I think it's had a lot of support. And I don't understand why there isn't some, again, I think the same thing has come out here. Apparently, I wasn't at last night's meeting, but apparently the same thing with the OO and so forth is that it just doesn't, I'm not getting the feeling, and not trying to be offensive, but I'm not getting the feeling that the board is looking at this and saying, sorry, but we gotta put the cost of that, we can't just spread it out and make it delayed. We gotta put it in reverse, okay? Cut that number, and we'll try to make it up in the future when we get our house in order, before we can go out there and say, well, we need it for this, we need it for that, we need it to second that. We do not have our house in order. And I don't think I'm not getting any comfort level here at this meeting. And I think I'm hearing this here, that the board is really, regretful and taking this serious that they have to cut some things.
No, and I think we've been through the budget process where, again, they cut $650,000 out of the budget. And, we can look at this again. We've got the budget approval meeting coming up and looking for where else you want to cut. So, I take this very seriously. I said when we had the budget meetings, I do not feel that we should be raising taxes overall for any of our operating costs and whatever, and we need to make sure that for the money that we're taking in, we're operating the township on that money, and that's true. It's whether or not the library is something we want to support over this short period of time, and that's its own operating thing, and you take it out of the operating budget for everything that the township needs to do. Does that make any sense?
I'm not agreeing with it, but, there's two little things, I'll close with this. There's just two little things, and they're small numbers.
Sure.
But tonight, there was a $320 bill here that without even a thought, okay, that my question was, You know, couldn't the county extension service in Chester County do that same lawn program free? You mentioned that a lot of people could benefit from that, and I agree. But you can get that free. But no, we go to Delaware and spend $320 in Delaware instead of doing something in Chester County. I don't understand that. We're putting a sign up at Barking Field, you know, thing for $900 for a permit. $900 is $900, and we did that without any consideration.
No, no, no.
Not
So
pay
the board
ourselves.
agreed to waive the $900 permit fee because the township would pay itself that fee.
Okay, but we're putting a sign up, right?
Yes, we still
Yes.
have.
What's the sign cost? Do we need a sign there?
Well, that's all been done. That's all
I was
finished.
gonna say, we inherited those
Yeah.
decisions, it's not really reversing it now.
All right, well, but again, my point is, you know, are we sensitive to every nickel that's going out that door? I just don't get the sense we are. Unfortunately, I wish I could, because I came here tonight hoping to see some, you know, something that was showing me that we really are taking this, you know, the way that I think that the community feels and taxpayers feel.
Well, we took it seriously enough that we considered it for 7 long meetings that all of you took part in, and all of those things we talked about are all in that budget. So we did take it seriously, and we took it seriously with regard to the money that was coming in as well as the money that was going out. It wasn't based on, do we have reserves? It was based on our actual cash flow. So it's solid numbers based on a clear projection of where our money's coming from and how much is coming in. And so it's all covered, it's in the budget, and you all heard it and took part in the discussion.
But the point.
So it's not like we have been ignoring it or that we've been handling it in an irresponsible fashion.
But the point is, we're not gonna get that 3.2 plus million dollars back. We're not gonna get all that back. We're gonna have at least another million in cost that we're gonna have. So this is different than a normal budgeting year. If we went through all that budgeting and it was a
So are you
normal,
suggesting that the $300 that we spent by going to UD is going to feed back that $3.249 million? Is that, so we're not gonna do anything in this township
it's
until we pay back the
$320.
Is that what you want?
It's 320 towards it.
I want Eden, Amy, and Roger
To what?
to be the only thing left here.
No, it's probably not likely, but I hear you.
So do you
I
want
have to go that drastic because I don't think the three of you are hearing us.
Do you want a police
No, I've
force?
heard
No.
you.
You don't want a police force?
No, I don't. We can't afford it. We can't afford it, period.
Do you want sewer system?
Yeah, see, those things, that's a sewer fund. That's not me. That's a sewer fund. And yes, you've got to fix that. But the general fund,
This being, I just want to be fair to the technical details, right? The general fund next year, as currently proposed, which includes a $1.2 million police department, it includes other administrative support staff like Michael, and Megan, who's sitting in the back. That's supported by the revenues that we're going to receive next year, and we're still going to have a surplus of $150,000. So listen, I'm with you. I'm very fiscally conservative. I don't believe in wasting money. That's not how I operate.
and
But
you're still not getting it. It's
You're
not
not.
that we're
Can you
saying you're
finish
but he's saying
what he's
I
saying?
said it's wasting. I'm not saying
Can
these
you
monies
finish
are
speaking,
wasting.
please, so then you can respond to it? So you hear what he says, then he can answer you.
So I think the point that I tried to make last night is that the alleged theft of $3.2 million is an impact to reserves, right? It's an impact to reserves. We wouldn't be relying on any of that money this year to pay for the expenditures that we have expected in 2020. Like if they just did a random manager search for whatever reason, and I came here in July, like we could have tightening up to do, that would be obvious. But I wouldn't be saying, oh goody, like we have $7 million, like let's pay for operating expenditures next year. We wouldn't do that. We would base it on the revenues that we receive. Right, what you bring in should be what you go out, and then you build a surplus and build up your reserves. So, like, we're just kind of expecting and know that it's not there. Hopefully, we'll get it back, but maybe we won't. But we're planning and working with what we have, which is the point I tried to make last night. So I agree with you. I want to trim fat everywhere we can. There's certainly a good, healthy public debate on the viability of the police department and whether or not you want it. The board, I think, has kind of stated a position on that pretty clearly. But I think to not spend money on stuff just to not spend it on services that arguably, are important to the township. I'm not sure that I'm there, but I'm with you totally on cutting that and maybe not doing things that are luxury. I'm definitely with you there. So, but I just want to be clear that we wouldn't be
If
using
we
that
didn't
reserve.
have the fraud and the theft, we'd be fine.
What's
I
your
want-
definition of fine? I just want to make sure that we're on the
Well,
same page.
and I'm gonna say this, because I've heard it from you too.
Okay.
We've got a budget for 2020, but I know in 2021, you're looking for more money because you're gonna come to us and say we don't have our reserves.
I think I said very specifically last night that I am really hoping, and we kind of think we might get there without that. I
But we
think
don't
if-
know.
Well, we
We
need more
have-
information.
Again, one
But
at
if-
a time, please, so he can finish speaking.
So I guess I think really I'd like to take us down the road of municipal fund accounting and, kind of professional management of your budget. If we increase government services next year, then the revenue that we receive should support that. You don't want a deficit spend. That's a separate problem that Kennet Township had, before we got here, right? I talked about deficit spending last night and what that means. You should have adequate rainy day funds, reserve funds, fund balances, all that kind of stuff. For cash flow, we have like $1 million in outflow next year of just capital that we're spending with our operational revenue. To me, that's going to be a windfall of additional revenue of which there are no expenditures in 2021. That's a good thing. We have a $900,000 grant match next year. Like, that's not a normal recurring expense. The fact that we can pay for that out of our general revenue is a good thing. So I think that we're not being fair to the technical details of the process.
General fund 300.
Yeah, okay. So, but there's $1 million
Open
in
spaces
outlay.
reserve.
So,
But I think you have said to us that we do not have our capital reserves.
so we don't have
We don't have enough.
a detailed
That was
capital
one of
fund
the first
or
things you
revenue
said.
plan.
We don't have enough capital reserves.
No, we didn't say that.
That's not what I said.
It's
What I
not what
said
it
was, so just to be clear, is that we don't have a detailed capital plan, right? We don't have an accounting for that. So that's just planning. We're going to do that without spending any money, figuring that out. And because we don't have a plan, we don't have a revenue plan to support it. We're going to spend probably 6 to 7 months developing that. And then we're going to say, okay, how do we fund this with the money that we have now? With the money that we're going to receive annually, how do we fund this? I'm very, I'm confident in Amy's ability to figure that out. And we don't want to raise taxes. So that's what we're going for. I said to her yesterday, as we're in the thick of all this stress trying to figure it out, I said, do you think there's a way that, do you think there's a way we're going to get to next year once we have all this more data and not propose tax increase? And Amy's like, yeah, that's an option. That's a possibility. So I wish I could say it's a guarantee, but I can't. But I'm definitely not. And I know Amy's not of the mindset of, yep, we're asking for tax increase.
And there's that whole side of it. But again, I'm looking for this board to get us back our 3.2 plus and 4 million that it's now gonna probably cost us. I expect, that's why I wanna cut this, so that those monies come back to us in that way. Because we're not gonna get it all back. And I want it to come back in the board showing us that they're gonna cut unnecessary things at this point. I'm not saying they're wasted, the unnecessary things so that we can get ourselves back whole again. That's all I'm asking for.
So I just want to clarify. I mean, we do need a capital plan. We do need to go through all that work to figure out what it is that we may need to spend in the future and make some prioritization and some choices and what are we going to do about round it to 5 points and that type of thing. But I mean, yes, we do need recovery in order to be permanently okay, but do we need every penny of it? I mean, there definitely needs to be a good